The night I saw a paper logo taped across our lobby glass, I knew exactly what Caleb was planning. It was October 18th, 2025, a Saturday night in Cleveland. I'd stayed late at the office finishing payroll checks. By 9:43 p.m., the plant was quiet, the only sound the hum of machines cooling down after a long shift. When I pushed open the vestibule door, a draft of cold air swept in, carrying that familiar scent of cutting oil mixed with walnut paneling that's been here since 1925. I stopped mid-step. On the lobby glass was a black vinyl mock-up, Dorsey Dynamics. The tape edges were still warm under my thumb. When I peeled a corner back, someone had put it up just minutes earlier. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. On the reception counter lay a thin white envelope. I opened it. Inside was an invoice. Brand Ideation Collective, LLC, date October 18th, 2025. Amount $2,800. Line Brand Identity Workshop. That was it. No board approval, no signatures, just a charge for erasing the century. I looked up at the brass letters on the wall. Mallory, the same ones my grandfather bolted in place in 1925. The sight made my chest tighten. He survived the Depression, wars, and layoffs without letting that name slip. And now my son-in-law wanted to cover it with vinyl and a rebrand pitch. At home, I set the invoice on the coffee table. Ava glanced down from the couch, her phone still in her hand. "What SEP's this?" she asked. "Caleb SEP's branding project," I said. "They SEP'd you're already printing signs for Dorsey Dynamics." Her brow furrowed. "Dad, don't stunt, make this personal." "How is it not personal?" My voice was sharper than I meant. "Your grandfather gave me one instruction before he died. Guard the name, and Caleb thinks it SEP's a decoration he can peel off." She leaned forward, voice softer now. "It SEP's not about disrespecting Grandpa. Caleb really believes a new name will bring investors. He wants us to grow. He thinks Mallory sounds dated." "Dated," I repeated. "Tell me, Ava, when you walk past those brass letters, do you think they sit are dated, or do you think about the man who built a company out of nothing?" She didn't answer right away. Her fingers tightened around her phone. "I think about him," she said finally. "But I also think about Caleb and how hard he SEP's working. Don't SEP turn this into a war, Dad, please." I wanted to tell her it wasn't a war, but I didn't. I just went into my study and unlocked the fireproof box with the brass key I've kept on my ring since I was a boy. The hinges creaked. Inside, beneath insurance papers and a faded photo of Dad at the punch press, was a folded sheet of yellowed legal pad paper. My own handwriting, 13 years old. Shaky letters in blue ink, Mallory Trade Name Covenant, 1985. I still remember the night I wrote it. After Grandpa's funeral, Dad sat me at the kitchen table and told me, "Elliot, write this down." The covenant said the Mallory name could never be changed without the unanimous consent of all Class A shareholders. My boyish scrawl was clumsy, but Dad took that paper to our lawyer and had it formalized. 11 years later, in 1996, the board voted it into the official records. I ran my finger across those words. What a boy had scribbled at 13 was now a line no lawyer could ignore. Caleb didn't know it yet, but I still had the rule. By dawn, I was back at the plant. The October air stung my face as I crossed the yard. Reggie Torres, our plant manager, was leaning against the loading dock, cigarette glowing in the dim light. He jerked his chin toward a forklift. "Look at that!" On the shrink wrap of a pallet was a label, DD Prototype. I peeled it off carefully and slid it into a manila folder with the invoice. Exhibit A, Exhibit B. Reggie Sepp's eyes narrowed. "You gonna stop him?" "Not yet," I said. "But save anything with those initials. Keep it clean, keep it dated." He nodded, and that was enough. Inside, machines clanged, sparks flew, steel hissed as it cooled. Workers nodded as I walked past. None of them knowing the name on their paychecks was being bargained away. That thought cut deeper than Caleb's vinyl. Their pensions, their stability, all tied to that name. Back in my office, I spread the papers across my desk. Invoice, $2,800, Oct 18. Doc label, DD prototype. Covenant. Written by me in 1985. Ratified in 1996. I stared at them until my pen started moving on its own. On a fresh yellow pad, I wrote at the top, "What changes a name?" Underneath, unanimous Class A consent. Bank notice trade name continuity clause. County assumed name filing. Vendor rollout, payroll, pensions, all only after approvals. Vinyl on glass wasn't law. Names don't change without process, and process leaves a trail. That afternoon, on my way to the break room, I noticed a draft left in the shared printer tray, a single slide, a clean DD monogram, and at the bottom, soft launch, November 1st. I snapped a photo, slid it back into the tray, and walked on. Not sabotage, just documentation. That evening at home, I listed the numbers that mattered this quarter: $180,000 due to pensions on November 15th, receivables from Parma job aging at 28 days, steel delivery due Friday, and the bank amendment we'd signed on July 3rd, which I remembered clearly, assuming no trade name change without notice. I picked up the covenant again, slipped it into a plastic sleeve, and put it in the fireproof box. The brass key clicked shut in my hand. The next morning, I met with Marla, our attorney. She spread the covenant across her desk, eyes scanning the lines. "This is strong," she said. She turned to a thick binder, flipped carefully, and showed me the page where in 1996 the board had formally adopted my covenant. Every director's signature sat there in ink. She tapped the page. "If Caleb wants to change the name, he needs every Class A shareholder to agree. There's just no workaround." I let out a breath. I hadn't realized I was holding. He thinks he can roll it out by Thanksgiving. Marla leaned back. Then he steps already over the line. "Don't argue. Don't threaten. Just keep the record straight. Paper doesn't lie." I nodded. Dad would have said the same. Back at the plant, I opened the manila folder, added a typed index sheet, and wrote on the tab: name, brand, governance, and approvals. Invoice, label, covenant, 1996 record, all lined up. It didn't look dramatic, but it was everything. My grandfather had bolted the Mallory letters to the wall. My father had told me to guard them, and now it was my turn. The oven timer went off at 6:20 a.m., and I didn't move. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cold mug and my father's old watch beside it, second-hand ticking like it had somewhere to be. Outside, Cleveland was still dark. Inside, the house had that heavy silence you get before a difficult day. I pulled the laptop closer and opened the pension worksheet. Line 42 glared at me: $180,000 due November 15th. No mystery, no wiggle room. Pensions aren't abstract, they're faces on the factory floor who expect us to keep promises. My phone buzzed. A message preview slid across the screen from a thread I wished didn't exist. Caleb Lyle, rename Doc Notes Convert. I reread it twice. Notes Convert meant his temporary voting block. The convertible notes Lyle placed in August could swing board votes if a rename looked like value creation. It wasn't illegal. It was impatient. I scrolled back up that thread, thumb hovering over the glass. My chest tightened in a dull, predictable way. I set the phone face down and returned to the worksheet. I entered the projected cash receipts, keyed in the steel shipment due Friday, watched the totals shift by a few thousand like sand moving underwater. The timer beeped again. I shut it off and left the oven cold. Ava padded in, hair up, oversized sweatshirt, the look of someone who'd been awake but quiet. "You didn't sleep," she said. "No," I said. She leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Do you want me to talk to him again?" "Not yet." "Dad," she tried to soften it, "he really thinks this will help." I closed the laptop gently. If it would help, he would start with the bank and the board, not vinyl and invoices. "We have a covenant for a reason." She watched me. "Torn," he said, "the sooner he shows momentum, the faster the notes convert, and the more control you still have to protect pensions." I almost smiled at that piece of logic. Control is in such a which you grab first. Control is in such a but cessed after you do things the right way. She nodded, but it didn't resolve anything between us. Please don't let this break the family, she said. Then tell him not to break the process, I said, quieter than I felt. Because that sip's all I have, process. She turned away to the sink. I hate this. So do I. When she left the room, I opened my calendar. A block sat there like a dare. Rename soft launch, November 1st, no owner tag. No board packet link. Just a meeting-shaped rumor. I dragged the window aside and hit play on an old voicemail I'd saved from Ellen Wu at our bank, dated July 10th, a week after we'd signed the amendment. Hi Elliot, quick reminder that the July 3rd amendment assumes trade name continuity unless we have written notice and a review period. This is just housekeeping, not a warning. Call anytime. I saved it again to a folder named Governance Bump and typed a short note underneath, no notice yet. Keep quiet. Keep clean. By 8 the house felt too tight. I drove across town to Lakeview Cemetery and parked near the path that leads to my father's stone. The grass was brittle with cold. I stood with my hands in my jacket pockets and spoke to polished granite like I've done a few times a year since 2017. I let him in, I said. I told myself I was welcoming help. Maybe I wanted your voice off my shoulders for once. But I did what you taught me, kept paper, kept the rule. If the rule still matters, I said'll be fine. A crow hopped near the path, then lifted off. I took that as my signal to move. In Kivens and Company, Marla waved me straight into her office. She had that calm evenness that makes lawyers good at their jobs and terrible at drama. Bring it, she said. I placed the clear-sleeved covenant on her desk. She slid on cotton gloves, more archival habit than necessity, and read silently, lips moving slightly over the words. This line, she said, tapping unanimous Class A consent. We start not going to let anyone pretend that doesn't sen exist. She stood, walked to a shelf, and pulled down a heavy binder. 96, she said, flipping pages. Here we go. She turned the binder toward me. There it was, the vote that formalized what I'd written at 13. Names in tidy script, signatures that looked like people meant them. This is why I tell clients to do housekeeping, even when nothing this on fire, she said. Because when it is, you don't want to be hunting for a hose. I am not trying to make a scene, I said. I am trying to slow this down to reality. She nodded. We do that with paper. A courtesy letter to the bank, attaching the covenant and this 1996 page, so nobody pretends they didn't set no. No threats. Just a mirror. I also like to make sure board governance is current, I said. Authorized signers, inventory schedule updates, and a one-line affirmation that we still under the trade name covenant. Quiet, routine, smart, she said. Housekeeping consent. If he signs it, and he probably will if you bury it among the boring stuff, then we have a fresh signature under the rule. I exhaled, a slow release I didn't know I was holding. Good. Marla slid the covenant back into the sleeve and handed it over. Store the original with me. You keep a copy in your index. If anyone asks for the original, they ask me. Chain of custody, I said. Chain of sanity, she corrected. On my way out, I texted Nadia, our controller. Me. Please pull any consultant payments since August 1st coded to HR that look like marketing or branding. Tight descriptions, dates, vendors. Nadia, on it. Might take a few hours. Want a ledger? Me, yes. Line items plus totals. Thanks. Driving back to the plant, I felt the breath in my chest even out. Not optimism, structure. I found Reggie near Assembly B checking a torque table. You good? He asked without looking up. Working on it, I said. If you see any more CDDDs, anything, snap a pic and hand it to me. Don't text it. Paper envelope. He gave a half grin. Old school. I like it. In my office, I opened the name brand, governance and approvals folder, and added a new divider tab, bank. I printed Ellen's voicemail transcript, just a short paraphrase I'd typed out, and clipped it behind the July 3rd amendment copy. I also printed the calendar screenshot that said renamed soft launch, November 1st, and labeled it unapproved planning. It felt petty for a second. Then it felt like a seatbelt. A knock on the doorframe. Nadia leaned in with a manila envelope. You said a ledger? I'm early. She sat, flipped it open, and walked me through it. Since August 1st, $18,400 to assorted consultants. Most coded HR development. Descriptions read like brand work. Voice exploration, story lab, vision sprint. She slid a highlighted page over. Also this August 12th, setiation workshop. Setted $2,800. Matches the invoice you found. I tapped the total. Reclassify to marketing, non-recurring. No drama, just accuracy. I shall do a memo for the minute book, she said. Straightforward. Thank you. When she left, I updated my index. Every time my pen moved, my breathing slowed another notch. At noon, I stepped out for air and dialed Ellen. She answered on the second ring. Elliot. Quick check, I said. If anyone were to announce a name change publicly, how would the bank handle it? Depends, she said. But if it's unilateral, we treat it as a potential covenant issue until we see governance and cash implications. We prefer 30 days SID notice and review. You know the drill. I do. Is something brewing? She asked. Housekeeping, I said. I shall send a letter. That SIP's the word I like, she said. Housekeeping. Back inside, I found another small thing, a printed voicemail transcription on the shared copier from a vendor. Loved the DD look, excited to see it in the wild. No date stamp. I wrote one on the corner with the current day, slid it into an envelope and marked it vendor chatter unofficial. If anything later needed context, this would help. When the afternoon settled, I called Ava. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? I asked. Sure, she said carefully. Is it about? It's SUP's about not letting this break us, I said, and about how to keep the rules without turning dinner into discovery. She was quiet a long second. Okay, Luna Bakery, noon. Noon, I said. As dusk came down over the yard, I did a final pass of my checklist. Pension due no 15 on track. Steel delivery Friday confirmed. Ledger, $18,400. Consultant spend since August $1st, $2,800 on August 12th, tying to the invoice. Calendar November 1st soft launch. Documented. Bank covenant reminder ready, call logged. Originals with Marla. Copies in my folder. USB duplicate to the desk drawer tonight. I turned off the office light and paused at the doorway. The brass Mallory letters in the lobby were darker now, catching only a ribbon of reflection from a far fixture. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. Collapse, I realized, wasn't crying at a table. It was the panicked rush to match someone else's speed. I wasn't going to do that. On the drive home, the second hand on my father's watch ticked under the dash light. I kept pace with it all the way to the house. In the kitchen, I finally let the oven heat. The timer beeped once, and I turned it off calmly, like closing a file. Tomorrow, I'd sit with Ava. After that, Marla and I would start the housekeeping consent. And if Caleb wanted to sprint toward a Thanksgiving reveal, I'd let him announce it out loud. On record, in the one room we'd invite the bank and the suppliers to hear it. I didn't need to shout. I just needed the paper to be ready when he did. Rain rattled against Marla's office windows on October 22nd. Cleveland had that damp chill that seeps into your coat, the kind that makes every step heavier. I sat across from her mahogany desk, the covenant in its sleeve between us. Pull the right thread, she said, tapping her pen lightly on the plastic cover, and the whole logo falls off by itself. I managed a tired half smile. The trick is finding which thread. She leaned back. Let's sense map it. Who's sense really at the table? I pulled out my notebook and started a list. Caleb, obvious. Dal, Kent. Hungry for a Q4 win. Ava technically holds my proxy, though she hates conflict. Nadia Sips got the numbers. Reggie saw the mock-ups firsthand. Marla nodded, and the bank. Ellentis already on alert, I said. She confirmed any unilateral change flags as a covenant issue. 30 days SEFTIS notice minimum. Marla leaned forward again. So we stabilize the bank, document governance, and lay a trap they said'll walk into on their own. I wrote it down word for word. Back at the plant, I found Nadia in her office surrounded by binders. Got your ledger, she said, sliding a stapled packet across the desk. On top, consultant payments, August 1st to October 20th. Total $18,400. They coded it all to HR development, she explained. But look at these descriptions: Division Sprint, Session Story Lab, Session Brand Identity Coaching. Session, she flipped a page, her nails clicking the paper. Not one of these is HR. I scanned the highlighted lines. August 12th, $2,800 ideation workshop that matched the invoice I'd pulled. Nadia crossed her arms. Want me to reclassify? Not yet, I said. Just keep it ready. For now, we just document clean, dated, accurate. She tilted her head. You SEP are building a case file. I SEP building a record, I corrected. There's SEP's a difference. Later that evening, I sat in my office with the lights low, folder open. The rain outside made the room feel smaller. I pulled a brass key off my ring, opened my desk drawer, and slid in a USB stick with digital copies of every document so far. Originals sat with Marla now. My duplicates lived in a fireproof box at home. It felt old-fashioned, maybe even paranoid. But when you've spent your life in manufacturing, you know that when one part fails, the whole machine stutters. Redundancy isn't paranoia, it's survival. The next day, October 23rd, I left my office door cracked. Caleb's voice carried down the hall as he spoke to someone on his phone. We unveil at the Thanksgiving supplier dinner. Trucks by December 5th. The optics will be perfect. I didn't move until I heard his shoes fade toward the exit. Only then did I jot it in my ledger. Caleb planned to unveil at Thanksgiving dinner. Truck rollout December 5th. Perfect, public, on record, exactly where a covenant matters most. The following morning, Ava met me at Luna Bakery. Steam from her coffee fogged the window beside her. She didn't waste time. You're going after him, aren't you? She said. I SEP not chasing him, I answered carefully. I SEP documenting what he SEP's already done. Her voice dropped. He told me he SEP's planning a reveal at the supplier dinner. He thinks it SEP's to lock in momentum. I stirred my coffee. Did he also tell you it triggers a bank review the moment he says the words so effective bait SIP? Her face fell. No. I SIP not trying to embarrass him, Ava. But the paper is what it is. If he pushes this public, it won't SEP would be me stopping him. It said'll be his own signature on the wrong page. She swallowed hard, then whispered, Do you even hear how cold that sounds? I met her eyes. Cold keeps pensions paid. Warm doesn't SEP matter when the bank freezes draws. She didn't reply, just turned her mug slowly in her hands. On October 24th, Marla emailed me a draft housekeeping consent. It looked dull by design, authorized signers, inventory schedule adjustments, a few administrative updates, and buried in the middle one unremarkable line, reaffirmation of the 1985, 1996th, trade name covenant requiring unanimous Class A consent for any change. I smiled at how ordinary it looked. Caleb wouldn't even blink. Lyle would sign anything that moved things along. Iva would grimace, maybe, but sign. And once they did, the covenant wouldn't just be history, it would be fresh, with their initials stamped on it in 2025. I printed the draft and slid it behind a divider in the folder labeled Consents Pending. That weekend, October 25th, Reggie texted me a photo of the dock log. A shipment had arrived at 6:17 p.m., labeled DD Prototype. He added a note, Not board approved, still unloading like normal freight. I printed the text thread, clipped the photo behind it, and wrote at the top in black ink, Chain of Custody. Received October 25th, 6:17 p.m. Every page I added made me feel calmer. Not safer, not yet, but prepared. Sunday night, Ava called. Her voice was quiet. Dad, Caleb says you spur building a trap. I paused before answering. If I am, it sets only because he sets walking straight toward it. He says you don't respect him. I closed my eyes. Respect isn't set what I set withholding, Ava. It sets permission, and those aren't sets the same. The line went silent for a long time. Then she said, "Please, just don't set humiliate him." I sighed. "Then tell him not to humiliate himself." On Monday morning, October 27th, I walked into Marla's office again. Rain had stopped, but the air was gray. "You have got enough now," she said, looking at the stack I carried. Invoices, labels, logs, soft launch notes, covenant, the bank amendment. The consent ready for signatures. Sab's already cornered himself. You just have to let him speak the wrong words in the right room. I nodded. Thanksgiving dinner. She gave a small smile. Fitting, isn't said it? Nothing like turkey and covenants. For the first time in days, I laughed. A short, tired laugh, but a real one. When I drove home that night, the city lights blurred in the drizzle. I thought about what Ava had said. Don't humiliate him. I didn't want to. This wasn't about winning a point. It was about protecting a name that had held 3 generations together. At the stoplight on Carnegie Avenue, I pulled the folder onto the passenger seat, thumbed through it, and whispered to myself, "The paper is enough. Let him hang himself with his own pen." And for the first time since I'd peeled that vinyl logo off the glass, I felt like I had something close to control. October 28th, 8:04 a.m. The boardroom was unusually quiet, just the faint pop of a coffee lid breaking its seal. I'd brought a box of donuts, the kind from Luna Bakery that made the room smell of sugar and cinnamon. It was a small distraction, a way to soften the moment. "Housekeeping," I said lightly, sliding a thin packet across the polished table. The cover sheet looked dull enough. Authorized signer's update. Inventory schedule confirmation. And halfway down page 2, one unremarkable line, reaffirming the 1995-1996th covenant. The rule that no one could touch the Mallory name without unanimous Class A consent. I didn't emphasize it. I just let the pages sit there like routine paperwork. Pens began scratching. Caleb signed quickly, distracted, eyes on his phone. Lyle skimmed and smirked, always impatient, but eager to move things along. Ava hesitated, her lips pressed tight, then finally initialed. The copies slipped into the minute book with a soft thunk. That sound, paper becoming record, was louder to me than any argument. After the meeting broke, Caleb clapped me on the shoulder. "See, that wasn't set so hard, Elliot. No drama, just progress." I smiled faintly. Housekeeping usually isn't set hard. He didn't catch the edge in my tone. He was already halfway down the hall, typing furiously on his phone. Later that morning, Nadia knocked on my door. "You'll want to see this," she said, holding up a folder. Inside was a flagged payment. October 19th, $7,200. 2 brand story video. Paid out of operating budget, she said. No board approval. I nodded, sliding the copy into the folder under consultant spend. Chain of custody. "Already logged," she said. "You're good at this," I told her. She gave a quick smile. "I've been good at noticing when numbers don't start add up." By lunchtime, Reggie texted me from the dock. DD prototype pallets arrived October 25th, 6:17 p.m., logging for file. He attached photos of the shipping logs and a close-up of the label. I printed them, clipped them behind the invoice, and labeled the divider Doc Evidence. Every piece slotted into place. At 3 p.m., I walked into the server room and keyed in a new access code. Founder admin rights gave me that authority. No hacks, no tricks, just policy. I logged the change, signed my name, and locked the record in the cabinet. If Caleb wanted access to the files for his rollout, he'd need to request it properly. It wasn't about blocking him. It was about making sure custody was clear. That evening, Ellen from the bank called. Her voice had that professional calm that bankers use when they're lining up questions. "Elliot, Izette reviewed the July 3rd amendment again," she said. "Any name change, material or symbolic, triggers an immediate review. We prefer 30 days Septon notice." "I understand," I said. "Has anyone attempted notice yet?" she asked. "Not officially. Then if you hear an announcement before documentation, assume the review starts instantly." "Understood," I said, and starred her email when she sent it minutes later. I printed the message, slipped it into the bank section of my folder, and highlighted the key line trade name continuity required. Immediate review upon change. That wasn't set my threat. That was the bank SEP's rule. Back home, I sat in my study and wrote the day SEP's index update. October 28th. Board signed housekeeping, consent reaffirming 1985. 1996 covenant. October 19th, $7,200 brand story video, unapproved spend. October 25th, DD pallets log 6:17 p.m. Evidence filed. October 28th, server room keypad code rotated per founder rights. October 28th, bank email. Trade name continuity clause reconfirmed. I placed the index in the folder, closed the brass clasps, and put it back in the fireproof box. At dinner, Ava sat across from me at the kitchen table. She didn't eat much, just pushed food around her plate. "You're really doing this by paper," she said finally. "That sip is the only way it holds," I answered. She looked down. "Caleb thinks you stars stalling to embarrass him." I said, "I'm not stalling," I said. "I said I'm waiting. If he wants to break the rules, let him do it in front of witnesses, with his signature already under the covenant. That SEP's not humiliation. That SEP's consequence." Her voice dropped. "He doesn't see the difference." "Then maybe he shouldn't be trying to run a 100-year-old company," I said quietly. Ava's fork clinked against her plate. She didn't argue. The next morning, October 29th, I found another draft slide left in the printer tray. This one bolder, Dorsey Dynamics. A new name for a new century, rollout timeline. December 5th, 12. I slipped it into my folder, labeled Unfiled Rollout Draft. October 29th. When I stepped out onto the floor later, Reggie intercepted me. "Got Iris to sign an affidavit," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Iris?" "Shipping clerk. She handled those DD pallets on November 1st. She wrote it down. No board vote, no approval. Just showed up and got unloaded." He handed me the notarized page. I read her neat handwriting, received pallets labeled DD November 1st, 2025. No record of board authorization provided. "Thank you," I said, sliding it carefully into the folder. Chain of custody just got tighter. That night, walking to my car, I saw Caleb outside on his phone, his breath fogged in the cold air. "By first snow," he said into the receiver, "it sets Dorsey Dynamics. First snow." The forecast said December 6th. I opened my notebook, wrote it down, and underlined it twice. In the quiet of my study, I looked through the folder once more. Invoice, doc label. Housekeeping consent with fresh signatures. Consultant spends. Rollout slides. Bank email. Shipping affidavit. The trap wasn't mine. It was his. All I had to do was keep the record straight until the day he spoke the wrong words out loud. I closed the folder, slid it into the fireproof box, and turned the brass key. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a thought I hadn't set dared before. This might actually work. Halloween morning, 6:58 a.m. The break room smelled like burnt coffee and powdered sugar. Leaning against the fridge was a foam board mock-up, the same sharp monogram I'd seen on the stray slide, DD sitting there like a prank. Someone had propped it on a folding chair angled toward the door so the first person in would meet it. I took out my phone and photographed it from 3 angles, then closer edges, foam density, print quality, a corner where glue showed through. I slid on nitrile gloves from the first aid kit, lifted the board carefully, and walked it to archives. The climate-controlled room next to records. On the first empty shelf, I labeled a banker's box, branding artifacts, unapproved 10/31sts, and logged the entry in the chain of custody binder. Date, time. My initials. Small things, but small things add weight. Reggie stepped into the doorway while I was writing. "That sign give you a jump?" he asked. "No," I said. "It gave me an entry." He grinned. "Old school." "Effective," I said. Before lunch, I met Nadia in her office. She had a spreadsheet open and a printout in front of her with highlighter skates across it. "I reclassified the consultant spend," she said. From HR to marketing, non-recurring. Memo drafted, no editorializing. Good, I said. Accuracy is not an attack. She tapped one line. Also, petty cash receipts for October 29th, $128 to a print shop on Lorraine Avenue. Description reads, set a foam board sample. That sips our break room celebrity, I said. Attach the receipt to the chain of custody box number. Nadia smiled. Already printed and clipped. Elliot, this will hold. It will, I said. Though I heard Ava's plea in my head, don't humiliate him. November 3rd, 11:15 a.m. I sat across from Ellen in a small conference room at the bank. She wore reading glasses low on her nose and a navy blazer that looked like it had never seen a wrinkle. She flipped to Section 2C of the July 3rd Amendment and traced a line with her index finger. Trade name continuity required. Any material change requires written notice and a review period. Our expectation is 30 days. She looked up. I set him reading you the boring version on purpose. I like boring, I said. Boring funds pensions. Ellen gave the hint of a smile. I can set police your board, but if anyone says the effective set before you notify us, my team will freeze discretionary draws until we see the governance and cash implications. Routine, not punitive. I understand, I said. I shall send a courtesy letter today attaching the covenant and that 1996 page so everyone's SIP's eyes are open. She closed the folder. Good. Also, if public statements are made, press, supplier dinner, what have you, send us the transcript or recording for our file. Clean paper keeps everything civilized. The clean paper keeps everything civilized. Is it? I repeated. I'm going to steal that. Please do, she said dryly, then checked her watch. You said still funded for pensions on November 15th? Yes, deposits staged. Then we're fine, she said, and shook my hand. Back in my truck, I typed a short field note on my phone. Bank confirms 2C, immediate review upon unilateral change. Prefers 30-day notice, courtesy letter today. At the plant that afternoon, Reggie found me outside Assembly B. You remember Iris? He asked. Shipping, I said. He led me to the small HR interview room. Iris sat with a notary stamp on the table and a page neatly typed. She straightened her glasses, a little nervous. I wrote what happened, she said. Pallets labeled TADD, sit. Hit the dock on November 1st. No one showed me a board vote. I asked. They said it was sit, Pepper proved. Sit, but nothing in the book. You asked, I said. She nodded. I've been here 12 years. We don't set relabel trucks without paperwork. Reggie added. She sips the one who stopped a mislabeled shipment in 2019. Saved us a supplier penalty. I read her statement. Clear, dated, factual. Iris, this is exactly what we need. Nothing extra, nothing missing. Thank you. She exhaled like she been holding her breath. I don't want trouble. I just want rules. So do I said. We set her on the same side. I signed the receipt line for her affidavit, got it notarized, and added it to the folder behind doc evidence. That evening, I opened my laptop and booked the audio-visual team for the supplier Thanksgiving dinner on November 27th. I added a line item to the order, live transcription feed, visible to all. 10 seconds after I hit submit, the vendor called. Live captions. Do you want verbatim or summary? The tech asked. Verbatim, I said. Announce it at the top of the event. No surprises. And record the audio in split channels. Copy, he said. We still bring the confidence monitor. I put the confirmation email into events/AV and printed a hard copy for the minute book. Announced, lawful, impartial. If anyone wanted to play fast with language, the screen would make their words sit still. 2 days later, walking past the shared printer, I saw a sheet someone had abandoned, county letterhead across the top. Cuyahoga County Fiscal Office, assumed name application. The date in the corner, October 20th. The fields weren't fully filled, just sample text. Assumed name Dorsey Dynamics. No filed stamp. I stood there longer than I meant to. Half a plan. It fit the sequence of what I'd seen: foam board, slides, dock labels. But this one mattered for a different reason. It was the right form picked up at the wrong time. I slid it into a plastic sleeve and added a note at the bottom in fine pen. Unfiled printout found on shared printer, retrieved November 5th, no filing stamp. Then into the folder under assumed name, attempted unfiled. Nadia passed by as I closed the drawer. "Find something good," she asked. "Something almost good," I said. "Which is better for us?" That night, Ava called. "Caleb says you booked live captions," she said, voice small. "I booked normal AV for a room full of suppliers," I said. "Captions are courtesy, accessibility." "You were setting a trap," she whispered. "No," I said. "I set him lighting the room." She didn't speak for a moment. "If he says something wrong, he set never forgive you." "If he says something wrong, he doesn't just need to forgive me," I said, keeping my voice even. "He needs to forgive himself." "I hate this," she said. "I know," I said. "Do you hate him?" she asked. "No," I said. "I hate shortcuts." She exhaled. "I shall be at the dinner," she said. "I want to hear the words myself." "Good," I said. "Bring the part of you that likes rules." There was a small, unwilling laugh. "I get that from you." "I got it from my father," I said. "So technically you got it from your grandfather." "Guard the name," she said, as if testing the phrase in her mouth. "Guard the name," I repeated. On November 6th, I sent the courtesy packet to the bank: Marla's cover letter, a clean scan of the 1985 covenant, the 1996 board adoption page, and a short note. "Mallory maintains trade name continuity. Any proposed changes will follow covenant and bank review." Ellen acknowledged receipt within the hour. Filed. Appreciate the clarity. I printed her email and clipped it behind the first. That afternoon, Caleb dropped into my doorway without knocking. He leaned on the jamb like the building belonged to him already. "You're really working the boring angles," he said. "Boring angles keep us funded," I said. He smirked. "You know, Elliot, investors don't buy stories about the past. They buy proof we won't do dumb things fast," I said. "Or they buy leadership that isn't afraid." He shot back. "I'm not afraid," I said. "I just prefer doors to walls." He shook his head, pushed off the frame. "By the time your doors open, we shall be on the next century." "Then open them the right way," I said. He left without answering. On the sidewalk after work, the air had that metallic bite that shows up before winter. I thought of Caleb's line from last week: "By first snow, it's Dorsey Dynamics." Weather reports had December 6th circled with flurries. A petty part of me filed it away with the neatness of a ledger entry. If he wanted a date, the sky would write one for him. I went home and updated the index. October 31st. Foam board mockup, secured, chain of custody logged. Petty cash $128, receipt linked. November 3rd. Bank meeting. Section 2C confirmed. Note: immediate review on unilateral change. November 5th. Unfiled county assumed name printout dated October 20th, recovered from shared printer, sleeved and indexed. November 1st. Iris affidavit notarized. No authorization provided at doc. November 6th. Courtesy packet to bank filed. Acknowledgement received. November 27th. AV booked live transcription announced and recorded. I closed the folder and slid it into the fireproof box, the brass key turning with a soft click. I wasn't pushing. I wasn't pulling. I was standing still and letting gravity do its job. If you learn anything in a plant, it's that forces find their level. If a part is out of spec, the vibration will find it. If a man speaks out of bounds in front of a screen that writes his words, the record will keep him honest. Thanksgiving was 3 weeks away. I didn't need to shout or corner him in a hallway or make a speech about legacy. I just needed to keep the lights bright, the captions on, and the paper where everyone could see it. Then let him say effective. November 25th, 2 days before Thanksgiving. The boardroom smelled faintly of lemon polish and burnt coffee. Caleb tapped a water glass with his pen, ping ping, like he was rehearsing a speech in miniature. He stood near the projector, jaw tight with confidence. We stir rolling this out, he said. A new name for a new century. Beside him, Lyle slid embossed folders across the table, each stamped with a DD monogram. Overnight relabeling, he explained. Fleet, signage, stationery. We flipped the switch December 5th through 12. Seamless. I picked up one folder, slid it into my briefcase without opening it. Caleb's eyes flicked to me. Elliot, this is bigger than sentiment. It's SIT's survival. Investors want scale, not nostalgia. I tapped my pen slowly, letting the sound fill the silence. Scale doesn't sit erase covenants, Caleb. You know that. He smirked. Covenants evolve. Paper doesn't sit evolve, I said. Paper sits. Lyle broke in. Gentlemen, please. Let's keep this constructive. The room fell back into uneasy quiet. Later that afternoon, I sat in my office, folders spread across my desk. My thumb clicked my pen cap over and over, a small percussion against the storm building in my head. My phone buzzed. Ellen from the bank. Elliot, she said. Quick update. My team will monitor public statements starting this week. If anyone announces a material change, press, suppliers, whatever, we treat it as a trigger. Routine review, immediate. Good, I said. She paused. I sense you you're not surprised. I admitted. Then you know how this ends. I do, I said. That evening I stopped by Marla's office. She looked up from her laptop, glasses perched low. I filed a courtesy letter today, she said. Attached the covenant and, importantly, the October 28th consent Caleb already signed. No threats, no demands, just a mirror. She slid a copy across the desk. Perfect, I said, flipping the page. The covenant line sat there like a tripwire, initials from every director clear as day. Marla leaned back. They SIF already agreed, if they try to say otherwise at the dinner. They SIF will be contradicting their own signatures. You won't have to raise your voice. That SIP's the goal, I said. Back at the plant, Nadia stopped by my office with a thin folder. Variance report, she said. Inside, highlighted lines totaled $26,400 spent on consultants since September, after the board had officially tabled the rebrand on September 15th. See this? She said, tapping the figure. They put it under miscellaneous services by, but minutes from September show the rebrand was tabled. Money spent after a table? That SIP's a problem. I flipped through, page by page. It SIP's more than a problem. It sings off-key. Nadia nodded. I prep a memo linking the variance report to the September minutes. Clean, dated, simple. Good, I said. This is exactly what we need. The next day, November 26th, I met Ava at Luna Bakery. She stared into her coffee, steam fogging her glasses. Down's up, make it a war, Dad, she said quietly. I reached into my briefcase and slid out the October 28th consent, pointing to the line with her initials. You already signed this? I said gently. Reaffirming the covenant. You didn't notice it because it was buried in housekeeping. But you signed it. That's SEB's not war. It's SEB's governance. She looked up sharply. You tricked me? No, I said, meeting her eyes. I protected you. If Caleb goes forward, he SEP's contradicting your signature too. That means you SEP's are covered. You can say honestly that you reaffirmed the rule. You SEP's are on the right side of the paper. She pressed her lips together, torn. You think this makes it easier for me? It doesn't set. He sits my husband. And you stir, my daughter, I said softly. I don't want you caught between us. That SEP's why I make sure the record speaks for you. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. Finally she whispered, Then what happens at Thanksgiving? I exhaled slowly. We let him talk, and when he says the words out loud, the record will already be sitting on the table. Everyone will see it for what it is. That night, in my study, I updated the index. November 25th, Caleb rehearsed rollout. Lyle distributed DD folders. Timeline December 5th, 12. November 25th. Bank call monitoring public statements. Review triggered on material change. Nov 25 courtesy letter filed. Covenant Oct 28 consent attached. November 26th. Variance report from Nadia, $26,400 spent after September 15th table, linked to minutes. November 26th. Coffee with Ava. Confirmed her initials on covenant reaffirmation. I placed the index in the folder, locked it in the fireproof box, and set the brass key on my nightstand. At dinner that evening, the oven timer dinged again. I almost laughed. It had become the metronome of this fight. Ava sat across from me, quiet, eating slowly. "Do you ever wish you'd just let him?" she asked suddenly. "No," I said, "because if I did, it wouldn't stop at a name. It would bleed into everything: pensions, contracts, trust. Guarding the name isn't about letters on a wall, it's about what those letters mean." She nodded slowly, eyes on her plate. Outside, the first flurries of snow began to fall, early, soft against the glass. I thought of Caleb's words by first snow. "It's Dorsey Dynamics." I whispered to myself, "Let the snow mark the date." November 27th, 6:02 p.m. The banquet hall buzzed with the clatter of silverware and the low murmur of suppliers exchanging holiday pleasantries. The long tables were lined with cranberry centerpieces, turkey carving stations, and glasses catching the light of chandeliers. I sat near the front, folder by my chair, brass key heavy in my pocket. Caleb stood at the podium, smile polished, hand resting on the clicker. He tapped his glass lightly, ping ping, and the room quieted. Behind him, the projector glowed bright. "Tonight," he began, voice steady, "we honor not just a century of Mallory, but a new century ahead. One built on scale, on growth, on the future." He clicked. A sleek DD monogram appeared, silver against black. Effective December 5th, Mallory Industrial Fasteners will become Dorsey Dynamics. Polite applause scattered the room, uncertain but obedient. On the side screen, the live transcription rendered his words in block text. Effective December 5th, Mallory Industrial Fasteners will become Dorsey Dynamics. The words hung in the air, frozen on the screen, exactly as planned. I stood slowly, folder in hand. "Housekeeping," I said calmly, walking toward the podium. My shoes clicked on the hardwood, each step deliberate. Caleb blinked, thrown off his rhythm. "Elliot, maybe?" I raised a hand. "Just a short reminder before we celebrate." The AV tech nodded from the corner. Already cued. On the screen, a scan appeared, a yellowed sheet of legal pad in teenage handwriting. My handwriting, Mallory Trade Name Covenant, 1985. Gasps rustled through the audience. The slide changed the 1996 board minutes. Each director's signature enlarged, legible. A line highlighted: "Mallory Industrial Fasteners' name shall not be altered without unanimous Class A consent." Another murmur swept the room. Caleb's jaw tightened. I spoke into the mic, steady as a metronome. "This covenant has been part of our governance for 40 years. Ratified in 1996, never repealed, reaffirmed on October 28th of this year. With these signatures," I pointed, "including Caleb Seps, Lyle Seps, and Ava Seps." The slide changed again, the October 28th housekeeping consent, signatures crisp under the reaffirmation line. "Unanimous Class A consent is required," I continued. "It has not been given." The live transcription displayed every word I spoke. There was no taking it back. Caleb stepped forward, voice raised. "This is obstruction. Investors want progress, not nostalgia." Before I could reply, a voice cut in from the side of the room. Ellen Wu, seated among the suppliers, stood. She held a paper in her hand, the July 3rd Bank Amendment. She read aloud, "Section 2C, Trade Name Continuity Required. Unilateral changes prompt immediate review. Draws are frozen pending clarification." The room went still. A supplier at the back whispered, just loud enough for the transcription feed to catch. He tried to jump the bank. Heads turned toward Caleb. His face flushed. I stepped closer to the podium and placed one more page on top of the lectern, a county printout. The assumed name application dated October 20th. "Half a plan," I said simply. "Unfiled, unapproved." Gasps again. Lyle shifted uncomfortably, tugging at his collar. I closed the folder slowly. We keep the name. We keep our word. That SEP's what a century of workers and families deserve. Not a shortcut, not a vinyl sticker over brass. For a moment, silence. Then one supplier clapped. Another followed. Soon the applause spread, not thunderous, but steady. Like rain on a roof, polite, supportive, final. Cameras clicked. Phones recorded. The transcript captured every word. I handed the mic back to Caleb. Your turn, I said. He stared at me, eyes darting to the screen. The papers, Ellen, the audience. But the words wouldn't come. Every path led back to the covenant, to his own signature, to the bank's clause. He lowered the mic, jaw tight, and stepped aside. During dinner, the tension lingered. Forks scraped plates, conversations ran cautious. Lyle avoided my eyes. Suppliers whispered in clusters, already recalibrating their allegiances. Ava sat pale, silent, hands folded in her lap. At one point, Caleb leaned toward me, voice low and sharp. You think this is over? I met his gaze. It ended the moment you said defective set on record. You gave the bank their trigger. You gave the board their cause. I didn't set trap you, Caleb. You walked into your own words. He glared but said nothing. After the event, I lingered by the brass letters in the lobby of the hall, their reflection caught in the marble floor. Reggie joined me, coat over his arm. That was clean, he said. Paper always is, I replied. You didn't even have to raise your voice. That sets the point. The next morning, November 28th, I sat in my office and updated the index. November 27th, supplier dinner. Caleb announced rename effective December 5th. Transcript captured. Nav 27 1985 covenant displayed. 1996 adoption shown. Oct 28 reaffirmation signatures presented. November 27th, bank amendment read aloud by Ellen Wu. Section 2C confirmed. November 27th. Unfiled assumed name application displayed. Nov 27. Supplier reaction documented transcript recordings. I slid the index into the folder, closed the brass clasps, and locked the fireproof box. Snow fell outside the window, soft against the glass, as if marking the shift from setup to consequence. That evening at home, Ava came into the kitchen quietly. She set her phone on the counter, screen blank. You didn't humiliate him, she said finally. No, I said. He did that himself. She nodded slowly. But you protected me. My initials were on that covenant too. I reached across the counter and squeezed her hand. I told you, Ava, this isn't sept about war, it's sep's about the record. And the record already knows who told the truth. December 6th, 7:12 a.m. Snow dusted the brass Mallory letters like powdered sugar. I stood in the lobby and watched the flakes settle into the grooves. By the time I reached my office, there were 2 emails waiting. Bank operations, pending review initiated following 11/27's public statement. Discretionary draws temporarily paused until governance confirmation submitted. Lyle, emergency board session. Monday, Dec 8, 9:30 a.m. I printed both, clipped them behind bank and board dividers, and wrote on my index snow plus pause equal sign consequence on schedule. Reggie poked his head in. You see the banknote? I did, I said. He grinned tiredly. Gravity working fine. Always does, I said. December 8th, 9:30 a.m. Boardroom. The room felt colder than usual. Everyone had that Monday morning after a holiday look, pale, tight, carrying their own private version of the same headache. Lyle stacked a few folders. Caleb kept his hands flat on the table. Ava sat between them, eyes on her notepad. Lyle cleared his throat. We need a path that restores confidence. Proposal co-branding. Keep the Mallory name on legacy assets. Introduce set Dorsey Dynamics set for growth initiatives. Split the difference, get the bank comfortable, move forward. I let the silence stretch. Lyle, the bank isn't set pausing us because they hate names. They set pausing because someone announced a change without approvals. Co-branding SEP doesn't set fix that. Governance fixes that. Caleb leaned in. This is about optics, Elliot. Suppliers saw strength. We can walk it back without looking weak. I opened the Thanksgiving folder and slid out a single page, the October 28th consent with fresh signatures. I tapped the line reaffirmation of 1985, 1996, trade name covenant requiring unanimous Class A consent. You signed this, I said, calmly, right here. Caleb exhaled through his nose. I initialed housekeeping. Housekeeping is how you keep a house, I said, and how you keep a bank. Ava Sitt's pen paused. She didn't look up. Lyle tried again. Can we, at minimum, present a timeline to the bank that includes exploratory brand initiatives? Ellen Pesta's voice came from the speakerphone. If I may, she said, the bank is fine with exploration. We start not fine with effective dates without approvals. Provide minutes reaffirming the trade name and a spend protocol, and we still lift the pause. Nadia slid a slim folder across the table. Variance report, she said. $26,400 on consultants after the September 15th minutes tabled the rebrand. She placed a photocopy of the September minutes next to it. Tabled means not authorized. Caleb stared at the figures, then at Nadia. We needed momentum. Momentum is not a line item, she said evenly. I added, we shall adopt a variance protocol today. Pre-clearance on discretionary marketing spend over $2,500. Simple, clean. Ellen Tett's voice, that would satisfy us. Caleb spread his hands. So I sit the villain, is that it? No, I said. There is no villain, there is a record, and the record is how we keep faith. He looked away. After the call, we moved into HR matters. Marla joined by video, hair in a low bun, tone-clipped and careful. 2 affidavits, she said, and the HR director slid them down the table. Shop managers state they were promised rename bonuses if DD launched by December 12th. Promises made without authority. We're not disciplining the managers, they were responding to pressure, but those promises violated policy. Caleb rubbed his forehead. I didn't set authorized bonuses. Marla Stu's eyebrow ticked up. Then who did? Silence. Lyle looked at his notes, as if the answer might be written there. I kept my voice low. This is what shortcuts do. They turn decent managers into messengers of uncertainty. We stopped that today. Ava finally looked up. What do you need from me? She asked. Nothing you haven't said already given, I said gently, and tapped the October 28th consent. Your initials are your truth. Her jaw trembled just briefly, then said, we agreed on the record to draft 2 resolutions for December 12th. Reaffirmation of Mallory trade name. Adoption of variance protocol and review of unauthorized spend. We adjourned at 11:10 a.m. No shouting, no theater, just signatures stacked on signatures. Back at my office, I updated the index. December 6th, bank pause initiated snow. December 8th, emergency board, co-branding floated, rejected. Ellen confirms path to lift pause. Reaffirm name plus spend protocol. December 8th, HR affidavits rename bonuses promised by December 12th without authority. I locked the folder and checked my watch. My father's second hand circled calmly. That night the house was quiet. Ava knocked on the doorframe of my study. She held a plain, letter-sized envelope, no logo, no flourish. She set it on the desk. My proxy, she said. I should have given it back at the start of all this. I said some giving it now. I didn't yet open the envelope. Are you sure? She nodded. I can sit in the middle, Dad. I need to stand where I standing. She paused, and I stand with the rule. It hit me harder than I expected. Pride and sadness braided. Thank you, I said. Ava waited as if expecting me to add something. Instead, I set the envelope gently into the safe, closed it, and turned the key. I love you, I said. I know, she said, and walked out. I heard her pause in the hall. I hope he learns from this, she added softly. So do I. December 9th. The bank's pause was still in place, but payroll and payables moved on schedule. I'd funded pensions on November 15th, and that cushion steadied the entire week. Suppliers called curious, not nervous. The live transcript from Thanksgiving did more work than I could have asked for. When people can read the words, they don't need a speech. By noon, HR had closed interviews on the bonus rumors. Clean memos, managers relieved. I signed acknowledgments and filed copies behind HR, affidavits. Nadia sent a 2-line email I printed and clipped. Pre-clearance workflow ready. Threshold $2,500. Controls in ERP by December 13th. In the afternoon, Lyle stepped into my office, closed the door carefully, and stood with his hands in his pockets. He stared at the window a long time. I said'll present my resignation on December 14th, he said. No drama. My fund doesn't set like friction. He exhaled. I didn't sign up to be the guy arguing with a century. You stir not the first to misread, old Sepp, as is stuck, I said. He nodded once. Fair point. He straightened. You so get the letter. When he left, I wrote one line on my pad. Exit Lyle, December 14th. It looked clean, like a wire cut exactly where it should be. That evening the snow picked up steady and quiet. I stood at the plant entrance and watched the wind put a faint white edge on every letter of Mallory. The building looked older and somehow younger under it, like a face you've known forever lit by a different season. My phone vibrated. Ellen. When you send Friday Sep's minutes, we'll clear the pause. Thank you, I replied. They still be clean. A moment later, Ava texted a photo of the parking lot wreath Reggie had hung on the plaque. The white lights threaded through the evergreen gave a soft halo to the brass. Ava looks good. Me it does. Ava. Friday. Me Friday. I slid the phone back into my pocket and breathed in the cold. Fallout wasn't fire, it was snowfall. Quiet, steady, covering the ground so the next steps show. Friday would be minutes, resolutions, and if the record kept doing its quiet work, justice. December 12th, 9 a.m. The copier hummed as fresh agendas slid into a neat stack. The smell of toner filled the boardroom, mixing with faint polish from the walnut table. This wasn't a holiday dinner anymore. This was procedure. The agenda in front of each seat read, Reaffirm Mallory trade name plus adopt variance protocol. Remove COO Caleb Dorsey for cause. I ran my finger down the page once, steadying myself. The meeting began with the scrape of chairs. Caleb sat rigid, jaw set, eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. Lyle kept his gaze down, already half checked out. Ava sat 2 seats away from me. Proxy returned, hands folded tightly on the table. Morla called us to order. We shall begin with Item 1, reaffirmation of the trade name. I spoke first, placing the covenant and October 28th consent on the table. This rule has guided us for 40 years. The record is clear. The covenant requires unanimous Class A consent for any change. No such consent has been given. We reaffirm Mallory Industrial Fasteners. A vote was taken. Unanimous. Item 1 closed cleanly. Item 2. The air shifted. Marlis's voice stayed calm. We shall now consider removal of Caleb Dorsey as Chief Operating Officer for cause. Caleb leaned forward. Cause? His voice rose. You separate manufacturing cause out of sentimentality. No, I said evenly. Cause rests on 3 facts. 1. Attempted unilateral material change without consent, documented by the covenant, the October 28th reaffirmation, and the public transcript of November 27th. 2. Unauthorized expenditures totaling $26,400 on branding consultants, after the board tabled the rebrand on September 15th. And 3. Promises made to employees of rename bonuses without board approval, confirmed by affidavits. Caleb shot back. I had implied authority. COO responsibilities include strategic initiatives. Marla lifted the consent packet. Your initials, Mr. Dorsey, are directly under the covenant line reaffirming unanimous consent. Implied authority does not erase explicit signatures. Nadia slid her variance report across the table, numbers highlighted. Here is the ledger. $26,400 coded to services after the table. Policy violation. Caleb Sett's voice cracked. Those were investments in the future. Ellen, joining by speakerphone, cut in, and banks view unauthorized investments as breaches of fiduciary duty. We paused, draws until you corrected this. Our expectation today is clean minutes and updated protocols. Nothing more, nothing less. The room went silent. Finally, Ava spoke. Her voice trembled but carried. I abstain. I 1 cent vote to erase my grandfather Sep's name, and I 1 cent vote to erase my husband either. But I also 1 cent stand in the way of what Sep's right for the company. The air thickened. Caleb looked at her, betrayal plain in his eyes. She couldn't meet his gaze. Marla nodded. Noted. Abstention recorded. The vote began. One by one, hands raised, 4 in favor, 1 against, 1 abstention. The motion carried. At 11:16 a.m. Security deactivated Caleb's keycard. He stood slowly, chair scraping back. So that sips it, he said bitterly. A century-old name strangling a century-old company. No, I said quietly. It sets a covenant keeping its promise. You didn't lose this role, Caleb. You gave it away. His face flushed, but he didn't reply. He walked out, shoulders squared but steps heavy. The door closed behind him with a muffled thud. The board quickly approved a severance package. Neutral reference, non-disparagement, standard terms. Lawful, humane. I signed the papers with steady hand. Lyle cleared his throat. For what it sets worth, I will be resigning. My fund doesn't want further exposure. No one argued. At 11:45 a.m., Marla adjourned the meeting. The record was clean. That afternoon, Ellen called. Minutes received. Protocol clear. Pause lifted as of December 15th. Thank you, I said. Thank you, she replied. You reminded people that governance matters. At the plant, Reggie was hanging a holiday wreath on the brass plaque. He stepped back, hands on his hips, lights glinting off the polished letters. Looks like it'll hold another 100 years, he said. It will, I said. Back in my office, I updated the index for the last time that week, December 12th. Agenda items completed, trade name reaffirmed, COO removed for cause. December 12th, variance protocol adopted, $2,500 pre-clearance threshold. Dic 12 severance signed. Neutral reference, non-disparagement. December 12th, security deactivated Caleb's card, 11:16 a.m. December 14th, Lyle resignation letter submitted, Dec 15. Bank lifted pause. I closed the folder, ran my hand across the cover, and placed it into the fireproof box. The brass key warmed in my palm before I turned it. That evening, Ava came to the plant. We sat at the break table with styrofoam cups of soup. The floor was quiet, machines dark for the weekend. You didn't scream, she said softly. I didn't need to, I said. Justice doesn't shout, it signs. She looked at me, eyes tired but clearer. I don't know what happens with us, but I know you did what you had to do. I nodded. And I know you didn't betray me, that matters. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand once, then let go. We ate in silence, steam rising between us, the Mallory name steady on the wall behind. December 28th. Year-end inventory always smelled the same: cardboard dust, forklift exhaust, and cinnamon coffee from the thermos someone always brought to the floor. I walked between stacks of pallets, clipboard in hand, listening to the scrape of boxes sliding and the steady beep of forklifts reversing. This year felt different, not lighter, just steadier, like a storm had passed and left the air clearer. Reggie waved as he tallied bolts against the wall. All in line, boss, even the stubborn ones. Good, I said. Consistency is all I ask for. He grinned, and justice, apparently. I smiled faintly. That too. Back in my office, I set the final ledger down and leaned back in my chair. The covenant lay in its sleeve on the desk, the boyish scrawl of my 13-year-old self still visible. I ran my finger over the ink. I remembered Dad's hand on mine, steadying my pen, guiding me as I wrote. The Mallory name cannot be changed without unanimous consent. At 13, I thought it was a ritual. At 53, I knew it was a lifeline. I closed my eyes for a moment. Revenge hadn't been smashing logos or shouting down speeches. It had been paper, receipts, minutes, a fireproof box with a brass key. Justice wasn't dramatic, it was procedural. A vote recorded cleanly, a transcript scrolling across a screen, a severance signed without venom. That afternoon, Ava came by the plant. The machines were off, floor quiet, except for the distant hum of the HVAC. She carried 2 paper bags, the smell of soup and bread filling the air. "I thought you might not eat otherwise," she said. I cleared a spot at the break table, and we sat. She handed me a cup of soup and kept her eyes on her own. After a while, she said, "I don't yet know if Caleb and I will make it through this." I let the words sit, then answered carefully. "That sets between you and him, but I know you didn't set fail your grandfather, or me." She blinked quickly, eyes wet but refusing to spill. "I signed that paper without realizing what it was. At first I thought you tricked me, but then I understood you were protecting me." I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. "I wasn't set protecting you from Caleb. I was protecting you from the fallout. I didn't set want you dragged into the consequences of his shortcuts." She nodded slowly. "It worked. Even when everything came crashing down, my initials were already on the right side of the page." We ate in silence for a while, steam curling between us. Later, I walked the factory floor alone. Pellets wrapped tight, machines powered down, red and green holiday lights strung along the rafters. Workers had already left with envelopes, $250 bonuses I'd signed personally that morning. That was the part that mattered most. Not the fight in the boardroom, not the headlines suppliers would whisper about, but those envelopes in pockets, proof that the system still held. I stopped by the brass plaque at the entrance. Snowlight from the windows glinted off the letters Mallory Industrial Fasteners. They looked almost new, as if the storm had scrubbed them clean. I whispered, "Guarded, Dad, just like you asked." At home that night, I opened the fireproof box one last time for the year. The 1985 covenant, yellowed but strong. The 1996 adoption minutes. The October 28th reaffirmation, Caleb Sepp's initials plain. The Thanksgiving transcript, frozen on the words effective December 5th. Variance reports, affidavits, bank letters, all of it neatly indexed. Not trophies, instructions. I closed the lid, turned the brass key, and let it rest warm in my palm. Justice hadn't been about winning. It had been about keeping faith with my father, with 117 workers, with a name bolted into steel. I thought back to Caleb's last words before he left. A century-old name strangling a century-old company. He was wrong. The name hadn't strangled anything. It had held everything steady. As I turned off the light, I murmured words that had carried me through. "You didn't lose me. You gave me away." And with that, the house felt quiet, steady, whole again. January 3rd, 2026. The loading bay was crusted with ice. Workers scraped shovels across the concrete, their breath hanging in the morning air. The plant looked the same, but the rhythm felt different, steadier, lighter. HR had taped a new posting to the bulletin board. Chief Operating Officer, Mallory Industrial Fasteners. Beneath the bold title was a line in smaller print, core qualification. Respect for legacy. I stood with my coffee, watching a few workers read it. One of them, Iris, the shipping clerk who'd signed the affidavit, caught my eye. She gave me a small nod, the kind that meant we made it through. In the office wing, Nadia had already taken initiative. She walked into my office with a binder under her arm. "Pre-clearance system is live," she said. "Any discretionary spend over $2,500 needs 2 signatures. The ERP kicks back anything else." "Good," I said. "Clean thresholds keep people honest." She smirked. "You sound like you sit her quoting scripture." "In this place, paper is scripture," I said. Nadia set the binder down. "You still need a new COO, but until then, Seth got this." I studied her for a moment, then nodded. Maybe you still have it longer than you think. By mid-morning, Ellen called from the bank. Her tone was crisp, businesslike. Elliot, we noted the December 12th minutes and the variance protocol. As of today, quarterly covenant check-ins will be standard. No surprises, no pauses. Quarterly sips is fine, I said. Routine is what I want. She paused, then added, You did this by the book. That matters more than you realize. I thanked her and hung up. Later, Reggie came into my office, carrying a box of holiday decorations he was late to pack away. He set it on the chair with a grunt. You know, he said, Caleb Sepp's lawyer sent HR a request for a neutral reference. And, I asked. We're giving one standard, nothing extra. Good, I said. True, not cruel. Reggie nodded. That sips your way. He started pulling down garlands from the bulletin board. Lyle Sepp's fund is cashing out too. Exit Sepp's at a discount, but not dramatic. Let them, I said. Discounts are the price of impatience. By early afternoon, HR had updated the org chart. Caleb's name was gone. Replaced by an interim box under Nadia's, workers moved through the hallways, glancing at it. No celebration, no gossip, just quiet acceptance. I walked the floor, talking with a few team leads. Everyone seemed more interested in the January production schedule than in the boardroom fallout. That was the real measure of survival. Machines humming, checks clearing, workers steady. That evening, Ava stopped by. She wore her winter coat still buttoned, as if she wasn't sure she'd stay long. I saw the job posting, she said. Respect for legacy. That was Nadia Sepp's phrasing, I said. She bis right, Ava murmured. Legacy isn't set nostalgia, it sets the part that holds. We sat in my office, the building mostly empty. She looked around at the shelves stacked with binders, minutes, contracts. You never made this about Caleb, she said. No, I said. It was always about the record. Caleb just tripped over it. Her eyes softened. I don't know what happens with him and me, but I know where I stand now, with the record, with the name. I reached over, squeezed her hand. That sip's all I ever wanted for you to see that protecting the name is just about me. It says about everyone who walks through these doors. She nodded, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. The next morning, I pulled one last page from the printer. It was a framed display mock-up, the 1985 covenant alongside the 1996 ratification. Marla had sent it with a note, for the lobby if you want. I stared at it for a long time. Not trophies, not warnings, instructions. I had them mounted in the entryway beside the brass plaque. Workers passed by, some pausing to read, some not. Either way, the words were there, written by a boy, ratified by men, and upheld by paper. A week later, Ava texted me at dawn. A photo of Lake Erie, pale pink horizon, ice floes catching the light. Her caption read, Coffee later. I typed back, always. That afternoon, I updated the index one last time. January 3rd, COO posting live. Qualification, respect for legacy. January 3rd, pre-clearance workflow installed. $2,500 threshold. Jan 3, bank sets quarterly covenant check-ins. Jan 4, HR processes Caleb Sepp's neutral reference. January 7th, Lyle Sepp's fund exits at small discount. January 10th, Covenant plus 1996 ratification framed in lobby. I slid the index into the folder, closed the fireproof box, and locked it. The brass key felt warmer than usual, as if it remembered every turn it had made these last months. Aftermath wasn't loud. It was workers steady on the floor, banks steady in their letters, families steady at the table. The covenant didn't win me a war. It simply kept the name, and that was enough. February 10th, 2026. The snow had piled high against the loading dock, so the courier wheeled the crate through the side entrance. The box was tall, strapped with steel bands, a delivery slip taped to the top. I signed the clipboard more out of habit than thought. What's inside? I asked. The courier shrugged. Custom brass letters. Special order. Been on back order for months. Customer Sipps's name says Dorsey Dynamics. He pushed the crate deeper into the lobby. The name glared at me from the slip, Dorsey Dynamics. For a moment I just stared. Reggie wandered up from the floor, wiping grease from his hands. What sep's this, boss? We ordering furniture now? I tapped the slip with my pen. Not us. Wrong customer. Reggie squinted. Letters? As in building letters? I nodded. The very same. His laugh echoed across the lobby. Well, isn't it that poetic? They show up 2 months late to a party that never happened. I smiled faintly. Irony has a sense of timing. I slit the slip free and read the details. Order placed October 12th. Shipment delayed by manufacturer, estimated delivery missed twice. Cancellation had been filed January 4th, but apparently not caught. The crate was here anyway. Wheels squeaking across the marble. I called the courier back. This isn't ours, I said, handing him the slip. Market returned to sender. He raised his brows. Want me to open it first? No need, I said. I already know what it says. As the crate rolled back out into the snow, I stood by the brass plaque at the entrance. The real name, Mallory Industrial Fasteners, gleamed steady under the fluorescent lights. Nadia came up beside me, coat on, keys in hand. What was in the box? Someone else's ambition, I said. She tilted her head. Good line. Mind if I steal it for the annual report? Steal it, I said. Just remember who wrote the covenant. Her smile was quick, certain. Trust me. We won't forget. That afternoon, I sat at my desk and updated the index for the last time. February 10th. Erroneous delivery. Custom brass letters for Dorsey Dynamics. Return slip hash 1143. Marked wrong customer. I slid the note into the folder, then closed the fireproof box. This time I didn't linger with the brass key. I simply locked it, set it down, and left it on the desk. On my way out, I paused in the lobby. The framed covenant and 1996 ratification hung beside the plaque. Words steady under glass, instructions, not trophies. Workers passed by without much notice. They didn't need to. The words weren't for every day. They were for the days when someone tried to bend the rules. I thought of Caleb then, ambitious, impatient, convinced that rebranding would buy respect. He hadn't understood that respect doesn't come from renaming a century. It comes from carrying it forward. Outside, the courier truck pulled away, tires crunching snow. Through the back window, I glimpsed the crate, letters hidden inside, destined to be melted down or left in storage. Some men rename buildings to feel big. My father had taught me another trick. Write the rule, keep the paper, and let time spring the trap. I breathed in the cold February air and smiled faintly. You didn't lose me, I murmured, words rising like steam. You gave me away. Then I locked the door behind me and walked into the snow, the name Mallory steady above.